Bajabo sa dumela. Oh, se go le sebakanyana. Fitile beke tse pedi since our last communication. Re wile re fano. Bile ra lamogela dumelang bajabo sa, dumelang community ya di claimant. More specifically it's Northwest province, although this video is made for everybody I got kono reachang and then I try to irrelevant for you. Kalibito ke Obri Abet Mpangani. I come from Bujanala district, Omandibing local municipality, Northwest province. I guess I'm going Malawa go ba nyana le phoso tse malwanyana ke biele ko pele. I think ke el ka gopola ke referile to CPA Act ya 2006. Obviously nile puo enkareng e tlhageletse le go ra khona go ela tlhoko mare le review the video we realized for honestly ne le ntse le gore ne ka correctega go bane gape le phosonyana e nyane ya gore re batlo bua ka di bill tse petse ne re buang ka tsona, equitable access to land bill. El ka gopola ke strike ka issue ya equitable, so the bill he felletse ke equitable access to land bill. And then I think the second bill, it's just an omission also. Kena kona re bolela ka issue ya communal land tenure and administration bill. If you look at hopola, ke boletse ka di bill tse pedi nngwe ka re ke ya tenure but ka se tlhalose gore e mogare ke communal land tenure administration bill. Ke di bill tse pedi tse minister a di beileng for gore di ka khona gore re lebellane ka tsona. But now just to know starta e re ke fane ka disclaimer tse few tse ke tsang gore on all aspects re tlale ka laba all means go di etsa, just to gopotsa batho gore rena as a team we always make sure gore re le mose batho gore ha di expect tsa re ipotsa gore re itse go feta batho ba bang ka taba tsa mafatshe. It's very important that re be go pele this thing ya gore le tlhaloganya gore as a team re berekisa ntho re bitsang gore ke intellectual memory. The background tse re nang le tsona based on more than 20 years really mo di CPA and then le di tse dintsi tse re di bona. Sa bobedi ke gore a re itse everything, even if re na le intellectual memory, even if I already expect but I read everything. In most of our topics re leka go di research, hence le bona in between sometimes a re khona fitlhela consistency ya ka mogore expectang gore etsa, but with time that's what we are doing. Hence topic ya ka jeko re leka gore he re phata knowledge a re phate because of re batla gore batho ba e lebelle on the site ya kare is for us to grade numbers kapa wana le social status. No, we much as we need gore e reach batho ba bantši, but we also try our main focus for etsa batho ba bana aware ka se se tsagalang mo dilo tsa mafatshe a bona, but also le go lobby ya di CPA as we started ka our first CPA video gore batho they should know. I mean, you go back, you find a lot of dilo tsa mafatshe either it's out of disinterest or maybe what go seek knowledge, information kapa at times it's all about batho ba sa itse because of our shock. It's a gore ba bantsi la itse ka CPA Act, which will be our first topic under pillar 1, how we introduced ourselves. So in essence re try gore her pattern knowledge, so re hape re batle le lena gore le re botseng gore ke eng se tshwantse ra se cover. sometimes you might find re pakiseditse di cover some other aspects only to find lona le ba this channel like I pick le some other things tse ne batlang gore di covering. So we invite you for le part ya maybe on our comment sections le re tlhalosetse gore ke eng se le setsang le need angles cover. But lastly also to make sure gore ra khona critiquiwa as in le re botseng gore just zona kapa yang, because of that's what makes us for cannot understand gore ke eng se se tlhokagalang. So please we are willing and available for one of the critics kapa any type of comment e leng gore e ka re agang e ka khona gore re tsweletse pele. So with that said, let's get down to the topic. Yes, I must emphasize what we are giving an interpretation, layman's interpretation, because as I'm saying, we are not experts. So we want to look at the second part as more maybe re ka khona go bitsang kapa go lobia the experts or di ka thusa ka much other interpretations, especially interpretation e tse leng gore di batla simolao ka tota. So level fela from the basics of what needs to be set under this act. But we also looked at where re sa level fela as an act, but also level in a form of what is the trail amendment, the background ya yona, but also it's an fela background, but also in gore go bane le eng impact e nang le yona mo backgroundong, and also how it impacts mo rona re leng badudi baberekisi le mostly batho ba re itseng gore re affecta yang. CPA Act arena ke Act 28 of 1996, and then it's a mo laong kapa it's a mo laong e le gore le ka gopola ka 1996 ne sentsane go etsiwa molao wa the country Act 108 of 1996, our republic's constitution ya rena it ne sentsane ya giwa kere, and then ya by le gore I think it was in December 1996 na kone by it's by promulgate, and then I started na effective ka February the next year. Ke bolela ka constitution ya South Africa, hence in Act 108 of 1996. But why is that important? Eske tsia issue ya act ke tsia ke kopanya against issue ya CPA Act, because CPA Act yona e startilwe ka I think or tabuliwa whatever process it tabled ka May wa 1996, and then ya starta go nna ya commence ka go berekela from the 22 tsa May the same year. Now question is, what was the purpose ya act nako ego? Purpose ya act ka on that time ntho ne ba di lebeletse ne le gore e enable the communities to form the juristic persons, CPA as in itself as an entity body ba botlhe ra itse hold manage property via written constitution. I got too much. We all know that forever, and each time you're lapisa because now we have acquired. We are at a space 2026 where we are holding and managing. So obviously, and then the hence it's worth noting. se le go bana le importance ya gore maybe he le ka checka mo lo mo ka iputsa gore and I think I got that question many times ko bathong ba re ile gore ka re try gore na le so se ba bitsang public participation go etsagetseng nako. That's where issue ya constitution is tsena mo teng. If you realize constitution is startile back nako ne e tswa ka di codesa, but by the time you wait one and sintsane ya giwa alongside ke go tla le yona CPA Act ntse ya giwa. So a lot of things ne sintsane di try go kreiwa gore how can batho ba ka nna involved mo dilong tsa tshwana le tsona tse. But whilst that was the case, go bane le this thing ya gore most of batho ba ba khonneng gore ba involve more acting, because somebody might ask, and I know now I'm getting into another territory. Yeah, act anyway. I'm tying all these three with the one that I'm about to really understand or how it happened. I'm trying to answer a question why there was no public participation. You realize before Act year 1996, which is a CPA Act, and also alongside the Constitution in South Africa. Only Act 18 in 1994, the Restitution of Land Rights Act, Act 22 year 1994. So it preceded before obviously Act year CPA. So because of that act thing ilona isimulang in nile taba tsa gore by the time you'd expect gore he CPA Act e tlang go tla bana le gore ke act ya bobedi e bolelang ka tsa mafatshe, and as a result e file bolelang ka tsa mafatshe ka involve batho ba mafatshe gore ba nne part ya yona. So now you'll understand gore it was an inception of an act. So at its inception, Land Rights Restitution Act in 1994, they tried, according to the records, before a promulgator, ba involve batho ba ne ba leng teng ka nako eo. They talk of the land rights, civil society groups, they talk of legal clinics, and apparently some of the rural representatives were consulted in making sure the Act 1994, which is the Restitution Act. I guess. So he would say that Act at least involvement. The almost immediate thing you can nahanang gore etsa hetse ka 1996 Act ya CPA Act they would have probably involve those people like it, because involve the same civil rights society groups, the legal clinics, and other rural representatives for Act 94. Could they have by chances by involving the same groups? Because akona more processing ya public participation e mention by involving in the inception of the 1996 CPA Act. They only say Act after 1994, but also those public processes, public participation processes necessary dilukisiwa alongside the inception of the Constitution. So it might seem right or why the questions are why Savanale public participation. I can only say that for now. So you save that as part of the questions probably that the expected. Now, when was the first amendment? Because if it was accepted in 1996, questioning the first amendment di nile teng nako ne ba lukisa ka 98. I think di tlile la mathomo ka 98 di ana effective ka September wa 1998, because there was something that was identified in making sure that act is amended. Apparently, barely no lack of oversight that administrative issues they are promptly the legislators already intervene, already conclude that draft later on the second draft year 2011, which I can mention more. I'm just trying to give a brief background then into the scheme. entse nako mo tsamao. And then what was changed ka nako ego ya 1998 e nna gore ke general amendments, and then update references ya department name le after government restructure. If like a hopola pila ka tla ke nako government land affairs, then mostly no gona le some administrative changes tse lo se di ana teng. But the second amendment yona ya 2011 e purporting ya 28 ke nako he 1998 ke nako na department of land affairs move away into now the rural development. So the changes had to take part because of that, because of it became another general administration, but also apparently I touched up too much of the policies, so it remained almost the same as the same act throughout 2011 up until now. It will start when it refurbished more ka 2018, which is the reason why we are here. So now that they saw that by identify the how part ya the changes ke, and I think that's what we have to be interested in, because that's where nalwena they refang a lot of changes tse leng gore re tshwantse ra itse gore di re affecta bjang, because those changes much as they started like 2018 they were only accented to law at 2024. So you can see the changes they did. And then when I can like 72% to 85 or 75 to 82%, like the changes they dealing between 2024 and 2025. Probably some of you can refer back to the report so you can realize. So they found out the how change it's obviously CPA registrar, I mean CPA office, registrar whom introduce or provide the establishment ya CPA office, ba batlela go pola go appointa the functions tsa registrar, but they realized for these changes they never existed before, so that is why they were identified. And when it comes to state intervention, they had to change that state intervention in if a department, the authority or intervene on CPA because of lack of authority as state in thing. As a result, people were doing as they wished. Under general plans, they picked up land administration le yona problem la itse taba ya go rekisa mafatshe mo rona o kry batho ba change di title deed ya this into ya CPA. I can't mention a lot. Accountability needed to be tightened because of lack of abuse. I mean, because of abuse at the committee, I think I can't go into this thing into too much this thing going until. So in a nutshell, those were the few trails that took place between 1996 right up to 2018 going 2024, which now started to affect us as we speak today. So we have to look at now, what are those effects, how are they affecting us, and what are those changes tse leng gore di nile teng di kgonang gore di ka thusa gore na le they understand the point by point and why it now has to affect us because of the 2018 are the very recent changes. Now these recent changes obviously didn't really effective from the 8 in our two previous testing, the 8 is at 2024. But there was one compelling reason why never push, because they found out after 28 years they picked up there's always been a rise in compliance percentage, because they even mentioned the percentage moved from 75 to 82. So it said no, there must be something wrong with the CPA. But now you want to know or want to find out by identify that rise here this thing. They pick up one abuse of power, and I think some of them we've already mentioned. The main overarching issues there's no state intervention. Power state in nesting much, especially poor monitoring by the department. Mention the objectives versus the long titles then something they are substitutive. I will get more into clarification what does that mean, and then clarify a CPA and improve our protection community rights right now. And I think that is the main issue and expect we have to ask what does that mean, because of in trying to explain more around it, we will get the answers. What does that mean? Now we go into a space where we need to check for the 2018. Have I the changes? Now we have to unpack them, like as in what can understand step by step. There are three things they are the biggest pillars that ordinary members nalwena protect that's all, and they're very important already. Simple language for pillar you own the land, not the committee. Expect it might not necessarily be about the name, but about the social the profession that I hold, and we are still sourcing out those type of people. So it speaks of three biggest pillars of this law that ordinary members must know to protect themselves. So the first pillar you own the land, not the committee. Meaning to say CPA is a committee. As leads or committee is structure nomination, and then AML CPA is an entity, and then here we hold, acquire, hold, and manage. Rebuaka lefati kapa di afesta CPA tsa claimant community the administeriwang ke CPA, and one of them ke lefatshe. But now they change, the first change ha e sa le CPA owner lefatshe as an entity. Nna wena house number mamang le mamang, any person who is a member owns the land as a committee in a form of the CPA as a structure. Meaning that the land is collectively owned by the individual residents or members, not by the CPA executive committee. Let that sink in. Se sera gore motho mongwe le mongwe o eling member kapa a le mo claiming community ya a particular CPA individually o owner lefatshe. It is a also in our first, if not second, this thing. I'm a fifth generation. I'm actually a fourth generation. I was corrected. I'm a fourth generation. As a beneficiary. Excuse me, not fourth. Fourth. I'm a third generation. Lineage and then third generation o mongwe wa bana ba 5 ba ntate o go gabo bana ba 10 o bontate ba hae bontate ba ba nang le bo abuti ba more than 6 if not 7 mo gore bo 6 of bo 7 ba bona ba ba leng mo ODI listing ya CPA ya rona ba gona le bontate ba kwa babedi ba ba more than 3 ba ba more than 6. So imagine if I were to take back those and say individually we own the land. So that's roughly what it says. So what are my householding? If it is an ODI, meaning to say originally dispossessed individual, our understanding of this sentence, it says an individual. It means I'm a member. If Wanaka over 18 Huyaka constitution, he's a member. So it means only an right there own elephants. I can tell So it is very important to really interpret that thing. As an individual, you own the land, and the committee is just the managers, but the owner is you. I think in that is the first inch. We try and unpack even more. The second one is the provincial CPAs are gone. Provincial CPAC ke tsela tse leng gore nako ne re ka re ka lebella certificate sa gago o tlo kry-a certificate sa gago se kwale CPA so and so, and then sa kwala number, let's say ya rena ke 1068 ebe e re slash ngwaga o e inceptilweng ka yone ebe re slash A would mean active, P would mean provincial meaning to say gore ke di CPA tsela tse leng gore di ka canceliwa if whatever happens, or since only temporary. I be say temporary. Maybe POA means a temporary. It's a temporary CPA. So molao o wa gona no 2018 ore ha go sana dilo tse. So ke tlo itlhalosa ere the new amendment completely repeals provisional associations. This forces the government to help communities to set up proper, fully recognized structures from day one. I can't explain more. Meaning to say, for fact that I was on temporary CPAs, wena heavily mo CPAs bani o sa itse CPA le na register or not. It has to be two things. It's either a CPA or a CPA. But for as long as we clear go to wena le sele la validatiwa, la researchiwa, la validatiwa, and then la inceptiwa, la setliwa as a CPA, there shouldn't be anything in between. Ya gore the provincial CPA. So I'm daring the CPAs in the body between the provincial or temporary CPAs, or they should start standing for the the rights that's on, because of the subject. Yeah, this whole thing are the three biggest pillars of this law that ordinary members must know to protect who? Themselves. Number two, area provincial CPA. So get go back go CPA as a member na full right this year. Since the 8th October 2024, only full right. For o check gore go etsagalang. Second pillar e bolela ka gore wena CPA a tshwanna go nna ntse. I can get tlhalosemo. Number 3, which is the third pillar, the registrar is your new shield. I can emphasize more. Register ntate lukoto ba le sa amazing go national. O tla re he o fonetse national if una le this thing, find out gore go province ya how. In this instance, province ya Northwest, for a provincial or a motaling in Churchill CPA sikema. But you, for a factory, if I shall introduce you to, and you have a right for find out to go the CPA registrant that they look out to get active as we speak. We were told now recently for Okatlare that the some Hasha might take over or has took over. I cannot confirm that. I'm not here for that. But we are saying by virtue of this act is talking about a CPA office certainly established through a registrar acting, that is go national office. So they say the registrar is your shield. May I explain here? Previously, if a committee stole money, as a research, or refused to hold an AGM, the department had very little power to step in. The new law creates a dedicated CPA office and a register of CPAs. So you can solve that problem. So the registrar has the legal muscle to inspect a CPA's financial books, resolve internal membership disputes, and help draft democratic constitutions. Oh, look, I can't emphasize more. I said this is a layman's perspective, but I think it's very self-explanatory if you are to listen. There are key words there. It talks of refusal ya committee who is a merkwabo, and for example, ya who hold a AGM. Under molao mompya, Okay, maybe before ka bolela ka example I hold the AGM, it can be any other thing because it also speaks of CPA's financial books. It also speaks of resolving of internal membership disputes. Disputes are it. To stand up. Things have to start rolling. And as a result, we have to use those type of backgrounds who ka reclaimer, not probably but one misinterpret or go reclaim power. No, it's about reclaiming you as a member, the powers say this act, the amendments, the Hufa. It is very important to note that one. Those three powers, they give you full rights. In our previous video, we made sure we for credit to Lamosa. I can't tell too much, but it's a horrible easy or 2014 so it's a halang in our previous video. I can't take much time give it to tell us. So if you credit to where we are can tell Lamosa. And I can try to explain the powers they're using again. So even before it's well like CPA, even before it's well like department, go another level, which is portfolio committee if we were to come to. We still owe it to or even beyond that, the organizations taking the name as similar video. We have to also name it for the changes to the Kisa ke rena staying maradilo on our behalf. And I'm not saying everybody is staying because I'm trying to cover a space where a specific episode ya gore what powers do we have as CPAs in terms of go pusha ditletlebo tsa rona. And then how can we try to involve a process from starting from it's a committee, we involve what is into how we move it to a regional, to PSCC, if regional PSCC in our case, go Northwest, to department, to national, and ultimately to another level. So, or even beyond. But eventually they end up by go the legal route. But there are other internal mechanisms. So we'll make a dedicated episode on that. Just fela hore ke tlhatlhamolle our knowledge re findileng hore ka iberekisa. So why ke bolela ka this thing is because Lamosa much as rena ba bang na re sa khona go nna part ya this mechanisms tse internal tse go ya ka Lamosa di bile di a fitla di a change molao ka 2014. Also in the beginning there has been a lot of like a land rights civil movement, body legal clinics, some community reps in the early stages what the act needed in terms of public participation. But it didn't only end there. We also have to give credit to some of the legal academic research institutes. That's on a level place. It's one of the acknowledgement that something right push that thing to honor. Plus poverty land and agrarian studies, poverty, land and agrarian studies, eco UWC. But one never protectang ever la hopola ke bolela ka di institutes di khonang go reach out to department, reach out to parliament ba re bolelele rena ba re pallang go etsa sefu ka tla re maybe ka etsa. But you know it is worth noting gore Professor Ruth Hall ba bantshila metsi, Professor Ben Cousins ba yona this thing ya place iko University of Western Cape. They became part of the legal academic researchers by resisting to these changes because they've been forever pushing. Professor Enika Klassen, ke wa Land Accountability Research Center yona ke ya University of Cape Town. They became those people who are under the Legal and Academic Research Institute. But also I felt the public interest law clinics, like I mentioned, Legal Resources Center and Center for Applied Legal Studies. They become the set of people I can't mention names because next year there's much research to find out who are representing, but it's worth noting for they were so a pathway of the second set of law clinics. But also there's a third set of civil society coalition and alliances, but what's on a level Alliance for Rural Democracy, Association for Rural Advancement, Nkuzi Development Association, and Rural Status Network, or Rural Women's Movement. These people fought during the parliamentary hearings. From the onset, they've been to ensure that these updates are not protected, and the poorest communities ourselves, poorest, not knowing in which instance, but poorest maybe in terms of information or in terms of ignorance or in terms of not being involved, I don't know. Changes especially up to who fitla mo pointing the changes those three pillars. These three sets of institute and the six institutes they've been very distinct, and probably there would be a lot, of course. So it's way important because knowledge is power. And if your community tells you that you don't have a right to see the financial statements, or you don't own the land, it says they are violating the law. And which law it is? The 2018, or should I now say the CPA Act Amendment year 20, Amendment 20 of 2018. They'll be violating the law. So it is important that hensere yetsa series there are things that it doesn't mean if I reach and then once you start the whole level what are the rightful things there just one thing. Probably maybe le understand the acting CPA registrar has since been appointed. It's actually confirming what I've just said. And shall commence, or had already, because we speak this in past tense now, because he was this thing, he commenced on the 1st of April 2025. Now, you ask me, June 2026, how long has the CPA, acting CPA registrar been in force, and how much of effect did changes di fitlhile ko wena or wena o khona go itse ka information and then wa khona go challenge whatever it's done mo CPA ya how, then go sena sepe se leng gore o khona se challenging yet go na le molao o protector. Well, go bane le this thing ka ibitsang gore go na le challenges because it mention much saying maybe this thing, and one of the challenges say probably department the acknowledging ke capacity ya go se fitlhisi information to each and everybody gore a khona gore a itse gore ke mokgwa mo feng a khonang go fitisa ntho. But here's one thing very important. Go bane le PowerPoint presentation probably is summer up the changes tse di nileng teng na kwe minister was doing a roadshow. Esamile up gore it is a show gore di kind of di simplify those changes, and it's worth go tsia yona re kopantsha le the normal changes and the re di tlhatlholla, but because of that was the simplest way of go leka gore he e ba di tlhatlholla ra di understand go for reference mo tsone, because those are the very important ones tse leng gore di needa gore he re di tlhalosa e be le gore maybe sa nna pampiri o e tshwereng e leng gore ka nna fela nne teng mara o sa kgone go itse gore he o e tlhatlholla gore. So in getting into blow by blow changes, ro refera thata mo yona that this thing that the PowerPoint presentation e editsweng nako go na le di roadshow. I remember go Northwest, I think it was August 2025 maybe. I remember, I think nailed 11 ake sure go Nest in, or was it before ake sure. As nako minister a startile go move sele ka mention ka yona for ba ba le mo group ba khona itse gore go etsagala. So ke tlo for reference from Motsong so that re tse blow by blow re understand or where it comes from and what is happening. Nkemele fela fo. So go tsena mo ka go latelang tsane ke ne ke boletse ka number 1 gore ne se ba pointile acting registrar. And then number 2 ya teng e le ka gopola ne bolela ka section 2D. By the way, e ya mathomo ne le section 2C. E bolela ka registrar. So section 2D ne bolela ka di responsibility tsa go administrator di CPA. Ke tlo e bala directly go ya ka ntho e gore ne e tlhalosa reng. Any regional office shall be represented by the CPA office yakere. And then with the consent of the Director General, establish a regional office and may, subject to the laws governing the public service, appoint a deputy registrar for each office to perform the functions of the registrar in such office, subject to the control of the registrar. So ideally more I gave much this thing because the specifics mo yona. Number 2, as in section 2D, which is the change. Mostly do under section 2. It will like a registrar le gore, it will like a deputy registrar, lady registrar in each and every province who sons of the offices are registrar. And then under the auspices the registrar on a national. And number 3, I should think it falls still under section 2. It says capacity constraints at provincial level to implement the provisions of the CPA Amendment Act is fiscal constraints. Obviously, the implications that think gore ne gole or go sampane gole sele a etsa roadshow. It doesn't necessarily mean gore fa tlile ka 2025 go Northwest gore roadshow nearly 2025. To some provinces before. Hence, when a province, I think one say two share in Kotswana. I am not too sure. So you can only level since molao into law. Act into law from 2024 October, and then we are now in June 2026, and there are possibilities that the 1 or 2 provinces they might be visited later in 2026 or maybe have been covered. I'm subject to correction. They might also be covered maybe next year. No, so I'm trying to say, at the time when this information was being put, it doesn't necessarily mean ne issue 2025. Hence, I have to be very clear it comes from the 2024 distinct information. So things has changed things since. So number 3 ne bolela ka yona gore ne le fiscus, right? Ba botle April this year. Go startile a new distinct last year, maybe ka 2025 financial year le yona startile, so there could have been the changes. So I want you to take it with a pinch of salt, or so what I'm saying it's exactly what could be happening at that moment. From the PowerPoint, the very same this thing, like a section 2, subsection 1. The provisions of this act shall apply to a community which is entitled to receiving a property or assistance from the state. Ake itlhalose much. ke tlo le tlhalosetsa gore why ke sa etse, because we need to go into details here re etsa ke nompa fela ke di etsa for record purposes. Section 2A e be like a general plan and registration of property ba haitso even has no CPA lena is no etsa e re like a general plan ya the property. It means that everybody should take part into saying lefatshe le lefeng a le berekisiwe for eng le tshwanetse la berekisiwa for eng go ba le input. It shouldn't come from, of course, the committee, they are being given powers or to recommend to the claimant communities. But I say everything they recommend and it should have been agreed on. So if nake atlaka tshego kare portion mang nna go ya ka representation ya ka leba ko household ya ko gae re bona ka tla re ka etsiwa bjana le bjana bana. Before decision can be taken, it has to be alluded to hore o mongwe ba ne le different. That's the powers that we are giving. And please sare he ke re nna le nagana hore I'm speaking ke bolela ka nice and individual, not Aubrey as a person. Section 2A ke yona ya general plan. The department shall, in consultation with the community consent, have general plan for such property prepared for approval. I can't express more because I think Leona is self-explanatory. It doesn't even go end there. It also says that that general plan shall outline parts of the property reserved for an A, economic, 2, social, 3, environmental, 4, sustainable development, and 5, infrastructure investment for the community consent. Meaning to say, if you lefatshe in layman's at this thing, ha go twe mare mo ro lema e tshwantse gore re dumalane ba batho gore mo re lema mo re bula resort ra e dumalana ke land use plan. I sale e le leng re tswa ko departmenteng e be ba re no this thing or ba re keng committee be re no na re naganne re tshwantse be le gore ke dumalana. And then it tshwantse ya segment you accordingly. O na le mo e bileng e bolelang ka industrial. It goes as far as saying really industrial, meaning to say if somebody a ka tla re tlo bula smelter in mo portioning e itseng, if ga dumalana, and it's all about sustainability, infrastructure investment. In case if somebody wa tla re o tlo hira a certain part ya ntwe a wile the ba di bitsang gated communities in the tsona tse. But it shouldn't be about committee e dumela e sa consult or lena le bona differently and then le palle go yetsa re tla tlhalosa mo. It goes into even saying recreational and many other purposes for community concern. Everything is around community concern. Those nchela go pela ke boletsa economic, social, environmental, sustainable development, infrastructure investment. It goes to recreational and other purposes. Other purposes can be anything. It can be explained ke whoever a bolelang ka yona yetsa. It goes into provision for economic and social services. Motho ba tla go bula for example old ba bitsang hospices ba re keng hospice. It can this thing subdivided portion for residential, industrial and commercial purposes. If somebody wanted to manufacture the quick example the I guess so on an industrial scale, the minister may prescribe the format for the general plan. May, it says. But it gets interesting here. It's in section 2D. Hey, we look at the functions of the register. This I want us to pay full attention more on. In short, but the meaning wa seba wetle in the keywords that say the very same distinguishable. It says section 2D function a registrar is to provide assistance to ensure verification of members, to register the CPAs and keep their records, to ensure compliance, to keep a register of registered CPAs, to safeguard the register, to keep a record of any bank account opened in the name of the CPA and any letter issued. Number 8. Keep record of any bank account opened in the name of the CPA and any letter issued. Meaning to say, as if you keep a record your bank account, but also le go lebella the transaction tsa any letter e leng gore issue between the bank, the CPA committee, and vice versa, from the CPA to the bank. Ke mmereko wa register. Number 9, to keep records of any delegation made in terms of this act and regularly review. Meaning to say, 9.1 ke not only to keep record of any delegation, but also to review such delegations. Meaning to say, if only signatories that this thing, o tshwanetse keeper hore ke mang a recordang a link secretary, and then le go review such the delegations tse di rumilweng ke nna le wena gore di bula bank. He has to also collect and keep record of any information required for the purpose of the annual report. It's very important that I also delve a little bit more on it. Gotwe o tshwanetse a collector and I keep the records tsa any information e tlhokagalang for the issues of making annual report. Annual report ba go check ra gopola annual report gore etsiwe, it's broken into 3. Ke chairperson's report ke yona e leng kind of re ka ire ke khutshwane mara tsotlhe e fana ka executive report. E be go tla e leng more important ya financial report. Re tsentsa le mo audited, re tsentsa mo in mo. Then go tla le e leng gore this thing administrative or secretariat report it's tsentsa ntsetso tsotlhe plus le tse ding secretariat report. So go twe register o tshwanetse a itse ka di report tse gore di kgone go identify ga kapa di informe annual report, because annual report in its totality it will be made of these 3 reports. Ya boela hape regularly the registrar should advise the minister and the DG of any regulations that are prescribed. Where ne gore mhlomong o feditse e tswella pele on request the registrar should provide members of the public with copies of the constitution of any CPA or similar entities with information contained in the register. Meaning to say, officing, it is still the responsibility of registrar for provide any member. La hopelana go kere individual or owner lefatshe. Meaning to say, le feel fatshe le ke PC gana owner piece as an individual ba bot. So hana motho ka reng owner lefatshe lo. Each and every into owner lefatshe. So here's even the information it's something you provide you in terms of the constitution or request of any public knowledge information or copies. You still own part of that because you need to know what's happening in order for mo lefatsheng le o rongwa le owner go tshwantse wa itse gore transaction go etsalang ka lona. And all this ke lo tsene le gore by now ne tshwantse be lo setse re itse ka tsona because this started ka October 2024. But I feel more. It also goes on to say, with information contained in the register or any other records, meaning to say, if una le record tse leng gore maybe o ka di kopang tse leng gore a o itse gore kile ha bana leng ona le o yetsa long as o follow molao wa paia o requesta, you have a right to o bana le right ya gore provide you ka information. By the way, molao wa paia ke Protection of Information Act, Administrative of Information Act, meaning to say gore if khona nong batla phone number ya ka le tlhola le utlwa ba bola ka paia ro popia Protection of Personal Information Act, o ka se fane fela ka ntho ya ka o show kry permission monna. Mara when it comes to the issues tsa CPA o tshwanetse wa etsa gore ba itse information e tlang go na le a way re tlo tsena mo di administrative things tsa tshwana tsona tseo o tlo etsa request formally o ise ko ntshweng and then e recordiwe ko magistrate or ko maphodiseng and then o ko pension and then o emele probably in some cases ho na le o patela but sometimes ba batla 5 cent just for administrative purpose finally a certain amount o tshwanetse e patela whether how small. So I see se ka padisa motho ra ka batle or abana le information. It goes on to say he has to impress the seal on the certificate. The original seal, original certificate in a embedded or a normal ring early eating the previous kings and queens. The takara kosi really ring ngwe gima is like a stamp sa high. Everything is one kamala was a hosi kapantwe o kare ba etsa mo enkeng and then we hit them. So that's the seal a power ya registrar na leon because of anything is nang that seal acting as a watermark is a you into. So what's under impress that seal on every certificate, any copy of registration certificate or any addendum, meaning to say if you look le attachment mo pampiring engwe le ngwana just tshwantsa impress that seal or any letter or any other document e ka tswang prescribe yo go ya ka mkho request e tsetsa. So it means gore ke di powers tsa administration tse e leng gore ntate registrar le koto kapa mohasho if in this instance alien o tshwantseng a di etsa kapa anybody o eleng gore o tla bo o itsisitswe gore ke ena a menang CPA office ko province. They also say perform any other function performed by the registrar in this act directed by any court. I can explain that. As may be requested by the Minister, the Director General, to achieve. The main aim is to achieve the objective of this act. This, it's law. And then it's only until would you say you follow the right distinct zamolao or CPA Act. Now we are section 7. Under section 7, the change settling thing, it will like adoption and registration. Section 7, subsection 1 speaks of prescribed the quorum for adoption of consultation to be no less than 60. I think all are easy. The number of verified members. Verified. And I think that's where like I like talk didn't say CPA said a problem here verification and verified members. And but here we all know I got a lot too much because of that is a chapter on itself for the verification. What do you mean and what are verified members? The process of convening such and notifying the registrar, meaning to say 60% there but while verified Section 9 will allow the principles to be accommodated in the constitution. Principles to be accommodated, meaning to say if we were to amend the constitution, what are the principles that have to go into saying this constitution is formally and validly amended? But any decision to amend the constitution is or dissolve the association or to dispose of or to encumber immovable property requires a resolution of no less than 60% of verified members of the association. Verified. I can like a member. So question is every member a member or is it a member as in verified? That becomes a question. I think it needs to be unpacked. What do I mean by that? But are you the key words tse di tlhagellang mo this thing. Any decision to amend the constitution or to dissolve the association, meaning to say CPR na sa bereka re tsa resolution or right dissolve, but ba bantsi ba itse dissolve ke gore e nna non-existent. That type of a decision a tshwanetse ke batho ba itse ba le go khoneng or by this thing. It has to be taken by exactly what it says, 60% of verified members. It also another key distinct to dispose of, meaning to say here le fatile ra le disposer the how part, meaning to ra le rekisa ra le donate ar sa le batla ra le ignore. It has to be a decision ya 60%. Hello hore it's encumbered that immovable property, meaning to say hore ra le carry towards ourselves. Let's say maybe ke le fatile le hore le tlileng or le donate to us, and then in that type of information also has to be taken by the ke nnete ke la rona or hele ka gopola equitable redress in a di parts tse different. It's either about fa tšhelete ke equitable compensation or ba go fa lefatshe le leng somewhere. Let's say ba re go ba bong go na le lefatshe le leng department le rekile mara for a particular CPA e leng go, for example go Catlin. Ke second way of this thing, or else ba lefa lefatshe la rena le leng gore le thing. So those three options normally they will always apply in case. So for that type of a decision is how you can encumber in a form of equitable redress. It also goes to say requires a resolution of Nellis dam this thing. All those three things take the feelings key this thing. Number 14 goes to say where CPA money shall be deposited into this is very important. This is very important. What do I mean by this section? Section A principles to be accommodated in the Constitution. Right? Then it says CPA may only open an account upon receipt. Okay, Article 14. A CPA money shall be deposited into account opened in the name of the CPA with a bank or a registered, which is registered, or any other institution, as may be approved by the DG. As may be approved by the DG. So if DG ya ka tswatsa le ngare ya go FNB ya sa ya go kae ke approval ya hae rena or anybody a leng mo committee or rena dira rena right. I think those will be part of the questions there ka di coverang you know, the lawful side of it. Number 15 CPA may only open an account upon receipt of an original letter. Oh, ke kopela e le tsentse ka ira hona CPA tla bulang bank account ba go isi e kry borifi bo botswang e bile bo signile ke register ke kopela go tla mogolo a gona as from the 9 or the 8th of October 2024 any CPA e kileng ya bula account invalid if I ena borifi bo botswang ko register bore e ya tsamaya o lo bulang account ba re bile register tshwantsa confirm gore the association complies with the provisions of this act. It goes to that extent gore not only that tshwantsa a etseba o tshwantsa etsa sure confirm gore ke nnete it complies, and re bolela ka compliance la itse when it comes to dealing anina constitution updated ina le batho ba ba right verified members, it's a decision and all those. I don't have to go into it, but it says it has to make sure that it complies with the provisions of this act. It goes back to say the letter shall be addressed. Since that letter shall be addressed to the specific bank or institution where the association wishes to open an account. Meaning to say, a hona account e o bulang e sa kara letter eo, and letter eo e sa confirmiwa ke registrar and ebile e sa addressiwa to the bank a CPA or ena DGR leng go buliwang bank ko teng. And it shall be valid for the period indicated in the letter. Meaning to say, a hona letter ya 2024 e ka tlanga 2026 it lore accelerate kera letter go DJ. That letter is invalid. I go express amo. Ya happy ere. Within 14 days from opening such an account, it should provide that letter to the registrar with the account number and such other details that may be required. Baholo, skoa ke asitsi gore sekatsa se na le mokgwa sona mare mo gona a ke ne di tlhalosa sepe. Because e ka 14 days o tshwantse ya registriwa ko registrar e re butse ntwe e bile a shidi di details tsa teng ka yona letter e. The CPA, okay, be ya ko section 11. It will like a monitoring and inspection. Monitoring and inspection, it will like a or appoint the interim committee. It's very important from amongst members of the CPA. That interim committee until AGM or new committee. The interim committee shall have one, all powers of a committee. They would like a interim committee the powers committee. Number two, you want an official designated by the registrar as one of its members. I can emphasize. Meaning to say, what if today CPA aina committee she go AGM and then that interim committee go dumelana ke 60% of verified members for retlo etsa interim committee if you want the powers tsa hona committee but the powers tsa di felle mo go tshwantsa bana lo mo one a se nna a se distingue act tshwantsa bana lo mo one a tswang ko department o e leng gore designate le ke register or not one of the members tsa committee. Unless if I didn't understand it different, I understood it differently. I think this is one other thing that needs to be cleared because it's very important. So it means if there's any committee interim, as we speak, only one member or designated ke register on party that thing, yeah, committee. It goes further to say no person convicted of an offense in the Republic or elsewhere, especially if that offense involves dishonesty or any other offense. Oh, I emphasize dishonesty, but or any other offense. Meaning to say, how le case revitsang ba re clear mabitso criminal record, it means you can never serve a more committee. But if that person has been sentenced to imprisonment without the option of a fine, that qualifies. But if motho a elected already ka mohara committee, motho tshwantse a resign as a member immediately. If anything, so it means ke mmereko wa bo mang wa go gata lefatshe la mang gore di administration ya lefatshe la mang lebe in the right hands tsa bo mang ka power ya man. Keep that in mind. Well, section 12 will like approval of certain transactions. It's very important to note that everything because it says the association may not without the consent of the majority of members present at the general meeting of members sell, donate, encumber, or transact any immovable property. Meaning to say, in short, for as long as section 12, subsection 1, it will like an association I should say decision before after the 9 it's October 2024. It means or anything it's very important because it happens everywhere because of decision this thing. For as long as that decision hasn't been made by 60% of the members, a gona sepe se tshwanetse sa etsahalang a ke batla tlhalosa thata ke tlo le tlhakatlhakantsha. And then e be bolela ka section 12 under B. E bolela ka donate or re ke etse re ke bale is because ke batla gore re etse amendment to section 12B. It says sell, donate or encumber any movable property or purchase any movable property without the consent of the majority of members of community members at the general meeting of members, and if such movable property was bought or is to be bought through financial assistance provided by the department without consent of the registrar, or enter any lease agreement in respect of any movable property without the consent of the majority of the members of the community and the registrar, provided that the registrar may only provide such consent if, in his or her own opinion, the provision of the lease agreement, including the lease period, the rental to be paid, and the purpose for which the property is to be used are reasonable and in the best interest of what? The community. Baholo, is packed this thing. Ke kopela hore ke beletse dilo tse dintsi, a ke batla hore ke tlhalose ya kganela all those things ke di mention ya di kganela gore for as long as it's not in the best interest of the community and it is not done through this CPA register, ntego a mo molao, especially o rekisa, go donate, go leasa. Now section 13 it will like administration of liquidation and deregistration. If CPA is placed under the administration, fortunately most CPAs are few. Get a topic under that this thing, yeah, the CPA subject to condition of the court, the minister may determine, administer, or manage the affairs of the CPA, perform the functions of the association in accordance with the provisions of the Act. The registrar may, in consultation with the DG, appoint any competent person to administer and manage the affairs of the CPA and perform the functions of the CPA in accordance with the provisions of this Act, who is not in full-time service of the state. May from funds of the department be paid such remuneration and allowance. Ke kopela hore ke sa etsenela too much because of I'll make this thing more yon. It's very important that this thing. It's only amendment section 17 annual report. Just kuning. But it's very interesting to section 18. Section 18 is like a transactional provisions. It says in its opinion where this is tightening of the ropes and welding of loopholes and shutting the flaws of original Act year 1996. I think they picked up whatever they picked up. It or state of readiness next day. It says more under section 18, be reminded that the department is rolling out the specific provincial registrar structure right now. CPAs should actively prepare by auditing their own beneficiary lists and ensuring their own current constitution to align with the collective ownership ownership principle. Baholo, a ke batlo etse ke kopelo e fetsa gona mo go just fela gore ke sa draw tlhaloganyo tsa lena too much. Ke batla le boele ko ke di badileng tsa office of the registrar or the registrar ke yona e le more important than tse tse tla re tlhatolla because tlhaloganyo di tlo tlala ka lo tse dintsi, but that's roughly what I needed go tlhatlhamolla le go le etsa. A ke batla go le etsa a very long video and then e be le fetsa interest le matla. We'll try to make our next video more interactive, the question and everything. And in conclusion, ke batla hore nna le team ya ka ke lebeletseng hore already expect we try to tlhatlhamolla se re se tlhatlhamolla, but this is the first part ya re batlang go etsang gore khono go try gore once re kreile another interpretation in the legal format re tlo etsa a full segments tsa each section. But so far tse le di tlhalogantseng, especially section e bolelang ka CPA office, it's very important that we interpret as such, but le na le tiro ya gore le lo yetsa lo fana ka inputs tsa lena wherever le kry second opinion, and you are also welcome gore le ka fana ka di-opinions tsa lena mo comment section itsiseng ba bang. Re tlo try to maintain gore re keep as much as possible these videos short, but if in a explanation is kana re tlo leka gore maybe re etse the second parts, but also we will also make them interactive ka go romela dipampiri le go etsang ke tlatla ke le for all these things once technically we have got everything right. But so far a ke le lebogeng and ke le itsiseng gore nako e re tlo banang le yona re tlo leka go tlhatlhamolola mo re kgonang mo teng, and more re needang go botsisang re tlo botsisa, more re tlo needang support ka lena re tlo banang le yona. But this is the journey that we are taking, and the next pillar e re tlo banang le yona of the 5 pillars re tlo tlhatlhamolola one yo banang le parts tse pedi, or if not say 3, or even little subsections. But we are going to the next pillar for our next video, and then the following pillar and the following pillar, just like that. I need to also say in conclusion for a fact ya gore a re sonne sure ka gore CPA indaba e tsena neng ba go le sentse re needa gore repopulating our document e ya proposal. I know gore we say a lot of things, but I reach batho ba botlhe, but we know where we are going. We are not going to stop because of what they don't subscribe, they don't this thing. Ultimately, in itself, it's a hormoto, there's something there and I it. But for now, fitisa video ko o kono mo fitisa mo ko mafatsheng o anang le a batla go itseng ka gore go etsagalang. And until re kopana ba goelo, pula mo gaetso.